Hey guys, still just trying to orient my phone here. My apologies. All right, let's see if that works. Looks like it. Let's light my candle. A little sage. All right. Here we go, setting the good space for our little chat tonight. So this is the 5th of 6 little Ayurveda crash course. And thanks for those of you who are joining me. All right, so we have talked about Kapha dosha. We have talked about Pitta dosha. No, we haven't. We talked about Vata dosha. Tonight, we talk about Pitta. So as we've been talking about Ayurveda, Aryu meaning life, Veda meaning knowledge or science, means the science of life. So Ayurveda is the knowledge of our inner nature, our outer nature, and how we can live more cohesively, mind, body, and spirit, together in our most healthful way. We've been talking about the 3 doshas. So the 3 doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, are part of all of us and part of every part of life around us. Everything in nature, animals, mountains, trees, plants, all of these things contain Vata, Pitta, and Kapha in different amounts. So when we're talking about these doshas, even though you might be predominant in Vata and Pitta and not so much Kapha, doesn't mean you should completely ignore Kapha dosha, because you still have part of that Kapha energy within you. So obviously we kind of, with the Nutty Pot Challenge and the Panchakarma cleanse coming, we're in Kapha season. So Kapha season is obviously springtime, and it's the best time to do these sort of reboots, to clear the body, mind, body, and spirit, because Kapha is the most resilient of the doshas. It has the most energy and life force, and again, just resiliency to, and strength to, keep your immune system strong while it's doing the good work of clearing things out. So that's where we're coming from. Last week, we talked about Vata dosha. Vata is the ruler of the other 2 doshas, meaning that it has the most power and strength behind it in the way of influence. So that when you are dealing with Ayurveda and perhaps you're getting a little confused of which of your doshas might be out of balance, or kind of talking to you in the way of, some of your health concerns, or whatever might be popping up for you. If you always focus back on your Vata and how to balance it, and we talked about that last week, so please feel free to visit the other videos from my live chats that are already on my Jupiter's Labyrinth wall. So please feel free to revisit those so we don't have to backtrack. But if you do bring your awareness back to Vata dosha, the 2 doshas, right? There's not 20 of them. There's just 3. So when you balance out the Vata, the Pitta and Kapha kind of follow suit, and they kind of are able to come to balance a little bit more easily. So when all else fails, focus on Vata dosha. So why am I kind of spotlighting the doshas for you? Well, because I'm hoping you'll want to join me on my Panchakarma reboot, which I'm going to have all posted, all the information about it by hopefully Friday of this week. So I want you to get a sense of what doshas are strongest within your constitution so that you can kind of coordinate yourself and sort of fine-tune what the Panchakarma cleanse might look like for you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Pitta dosha. So Pitta dosha is the water and fire element. Now, you can imagine with water and fire what that creates. It's steam, right? So a lot of heat, a lot of spark. So Pitta is all about warmth. It is damp though, but it's very active. It's very, it's spicy. It's aggressive. It can be. It is light. It's airy, but it's intense. So these are some of the qualities of Pitta dosha, and we'll see them in the physical, mental, and emotional bodies of a Pitta predominant person. So what can that look like? Well, Pitta body types are typically pretty athletic. They are a medium build, and everything looks pretty much like in its perfect place, if you will. So one of the ways I learned about Pitta was kind of like perfect Pitta, because not only, first of all, no one's perfect, but it's an easy way to remember a few things about this dosha. They kind of just like they look put together. Nothing is really out of the ordinary around them. They're not like Vata, where Vatas tend to have a little bit of irregularity going on, or a lot, meaning they might have a small mouth with big teeth, or they're really tall, or they're really short, or their eyes are really large, but yet they have a small face, or they have really long fingers, things that just kind of look slightly not quite proportional to the rest of them. Pittas, on the other hand, everything pretty much like fits. Like everything's kind of like, yeah, everything goes really well together. And they have a medium build because they're pretty athletic. So they have a good muscle build. They don't really lose or gain weight very easily. And yeah, they're usually just kind of the middle of the road. So if Vatas veer towards being too skinny and losing weight easily, and Pittas veer towards maybe being a little bit overweight or a lot overweight, Pittas falls in the middle. All right, other physical attributes about Pitta. So they can be flushed. They can have rosy cheeks. They can even have, in an imbalanced Pitta, they can have skin issues. So acne and eczema and psoriasis, just anything to do with the skin is usually Pitta, especially if it's irritated. They tend to have light eyes. They tend to burn easily. So skin that is usually on the paler side, and they're sensitive to heat. They're sensitive to the sun. They usually have light colored hair as well, but not always. What else about Pitta's physical attributes? They tend to have even like pink nail beds. So if you look at their nails, they tend to be rosy as well. So there's a color. Color is important for Pittas. They are very colorful people in their personalities, but also in their bodies. So we talked a little bit about stools and tongue attributes, because those are really great ways to examine your own doshas within you. So if you were to look at a Pitta's tongue, first of all, it would be very pointy, and it would kind of stick out almost like I always say snake, but it's not quite a snake because there's no divided piece. It's not it's all in one piece. Not like a snake that kind of has a V in it, but it's pointed, and it's often red in color or bright pink. They often have raised little papillae, or those little red dots somewhere on the tongue, or maybe just at the top tip of the tongue. And you might even see a coating on the tongue, and it might be yellowish or maybe even greenish. That's Pitta. So again, anything that's colorful in nature is Pitta piping up and talking to you. Now, on the other end of the digestive tract, we talk about poop and what Pittas look like in the way of digestion. So Pitta rules the stomach and into the small intestine. So it kind of shares a little bit of that with Kapha, but small intestine, because it's all about digesting food, breaking things down, and absorbing them for energy. So Pitta is really where that Agni, that digestive fire, comes from. So typically Pittas have very powerful digestion, very heated digestion, to the point where they veer towards softer stools and more loose stools, maybe even diarrhea. And they tend to have a color of more on the yellow side. So I was taught to talk about stools, and this is kind of terrible, but we'll do it because it works, in the way of chocolate. So there's dark chocolate, there's milk chocolate, and then I guess Pitta does not fall in the realm of chocolate at all, because that would be like, I don't know, caramel chocolate or something like that, caramel filled chocolate. Anyhow, sorry not to be too graphic, but we've got Pitta who isn't really brown at all. It's more of like this browny, yellowy, or maybe even greenish or brighter yellow type of tinge going on there. And that is because there's so much heat in their digestive tracts. There's also typically food particles in the stools of Pittas, and they tend to be maybe even feathered, like the stools are feathery, versus Vata stools, which might be lumpy and like bunny pellets. So what does this mean? It means that Pitta needs to slow their roll in the way of digesting their food and slow things down, because sometimes food goes in and then food comes right out. Sometimes they're going to the bathroom more than once a day, which often is too much, because we want to keep the food in our guts, especially our small intestine, to absorb all the nutrients in there. So that's kind of some other Pitta attributes there. Pittas also sweat a lot. They do. They sweat a lot. They tend towards balding or thinning of hair because they're very hot-headed, which brings us to their personality traits. So Pittas are hot-headed. They are, so let's paint them a couple different ways. So when they're in their balanced state, Pitta types are very good leaders. They love to kind of lead the way. They're very good at organizing. They're critically minded, so they can make a plan. They're charismatic. They're good speakers. They are just they're very able to clearly see a plan and follow through with it and help people, kind of lure people along to help them in whatever, their passion might be. And they're very passionate people. They're also very, they can be aggressive. They can be argumentative. In fact, they typically love to argue, which is not great for them, but they do. They will often, debate at any possible conversation. They'll find a way to be devil's advocate. They also they're competitive within themselves as well. So Pittas want to be perfect. Honestly, obviously, clearly no one's perfect, but Pittas really they strive to. So as much as they might be critical outwardly, they're very critical internally towards themselves as well. And typically when they grow up, when they're younger, they're very, very shy, and they take a while to warm up to people because they don't want anyone to know that they're not actually perfect, because they want to be, and they don't want anyone else to know that they're not. So that's a kind of a Pitta trait there. Let's see, what else can I say in the way of Pitta? So some of the physical imbalances that you'll see in Pitta, other than diarrhea or loose stool, we talked about acne, any itis, any inflammation, any inflammatory disease going on in the body that deals with heated conditions, that's what inflammation is, or chronic inflammation, I should say, is ruled by Pitta. So urinary tract infections or cystitis or laryngitis, psoriasis we talked about, acid reflux is actually another good one. It's not an itis, but it's too much heat in the belly and it's gurgling back up. So a lot of heated digestive issues are related to our friend Pitta. What else? When you are heavily, heavily bleeding during a menstrual cycle, that is excess Pitta. What else? I always just think of the skin and liver conditions, gallbladder, spleen, all of our eliminatory organs, but especially the skin, because it's kind of our last mode of elimination is through our skin. So often when Pitta is high, it comes out through our skin in heated conditions. I know I'm missing some obvious ones, but maybe they'll pop back into my head. I'm kind of going off the cuff here, no notes. So I'll come back to it if I think of any other examples of the typical Pitta issues in the physical body, but I think I gave you at least a few to chew upon. Heat stroke is another one. I mentioned how they're very sensitive to heat. So anything that's exacerbating the heat in Pitta will certainly create more physical imbalances and discomfort in the way of, in the physicality of their imbalances and disease. All right, what else can we say about Pitta? We can talk about the foods that are great for Pitta. So we talked about Kapha, how Kaphas are balanced, our Kapha energy is balanced by the bitter, the astringent, and the pungent. We talked about Vata, where they are balanced with the sweet, sour, and salty. And then finally, Pitta is a kind of a combination of Vata and Kapha balancing. So we have the sweet, we have the bitter, and we have the astringent. So again, I'm not talking about adding sugar to anything for the sweet. I'm talking about naturally occurring sweet flavors. So we've got corn, we've got yams, we've got parsnips. Those are all naturally sweet things. For bitters, of course, we've got greens, we've got collards, we've got, asparagus, green beans. These are partially on the bitter side to help balance out that Pitta. So, and then finally, astringent. So we talked about astringent a little bit with the Kapha dosha and the way of, it's not really a flavor per se, but it's a sensation that we experience in our mouth. So I think about taking a big mouthful of, say, black beans with nothing in it, or white rice. It's very astringent to the mouth, so it kind of dries things up. So Pitta is water and fire, right? So we've got the heat and we've got the water. So Pitta does need a little bit of drying out, but not too much. So that's why we've got the sweetness, which brings a little bit more moistening into it. But it does need to tonify a little bit. So things can get lax within Pittas because of the water element and that heat. So astringency can help to kind of tone things up. We talked about red raspberry leaf. We talked about nettle leaf for some of the herbs around that, I believe, with kapha. So those are two other ones that can help to astringe naturally. And then what else do we have to say? So those are just foods. So sweet, bitter, astringent for Pitta. Other things that help to balance Pitta. Well, we talked about schedule last time. So schedule is really helpful for all the doshas. Breath work, movement is great for all the doshas. So Pitta is kind of the middle of the road where they are super athletic, so they like to kind of get a workout in. But I will tell you, because they're so fiery, especially in nature, they might need to back it up a little bit. They're typically attracted to more intense workouts, which is great, and they're able to do that to a point. But I always like to point this out for high Pittas that they're made up of the water and fire element. So going to something like maybe Bikram yoga, which is very steamy and very fiery, will probably just build more Pitta up within you, which, hey, maybe that's what you're going for. Maybe you have a little bit of kapha and you're trying to like cook it off with some Pitta energy, then have at it. But that's kind of the perfect example, like the yoga manifestation of Pitta is Bikram. But cooling activities, so things to cool you off. So thinking about, especially in the summertime when it's hot, don't do your workout at high noon. Come in for a cool shower, find some shade, swim. Swimming is really lovely. Yin yoga, anything that's just a little less intense, especially if you are choosing to work out in the middle of the day when it's, a little bit warmer out. Pitta, if you hadn't already guessed this, rules the summer season, so mid-May all the way to the end of, actually I should say late May, early June into really August, right? August and September. Every resource gives us a slightly different date, but you go with what's going on in the nature around us as well. So typically, at least in New England, we're looking at August as Pitta comes to a close. So it's the summer season where everything is warm and active and fiery and exciting and also colorful. So we talk about colorful a lot, but let's think about that around us when, especially for me and others of you who enjoy gardening and maybe are herbalists as well, it's when everything's growing and blooming. So the colors are magnificent of all the flowers, all the vegetables that we're growing in our lawns and gardens. Color everywhere, vibrancy everywhere. So another wonderful thing for Pitta is to surround yourself with that color, with that beauty. And even though it's, it's kind of increasing that Pitta energy, it's also when we're using nature to encourage this balancing, it has a different effect on us. So especially within using our senses, colors, smells, scents. I talked about aromatherapy for kapha, but aromatherapy can help for all of the doshas. And depending on how you're trying to sort of acclimate or find a balance within whatever dosha is kind of rearing its head out at you. So for Pitta, we're always thinking about cooling things down if you're feeling an exacerbated Pitta. So you want to think about peppermint, or you want to think about fennel, or something sweet like rose or even jasmine. They help to kind of calm that fiery nature of Pitta when it's kind of out of whack. For a second, I thought my candle was setting my little fern on fire. So Pitta is, again, water and fire. It's very aggressive, or can be when it's out of balance. So we're looking for ways to calm it. One of the most important things about Pitta is keeping the Agni balanced. So the times of day that Pitta rules, we've got the 10 to 2 time frame. So 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And this is the time where we want to eat our largest meal and then let our bodies detoxify. So around mealtime, right? High noon is really perfect, is when we should be eating our largest meal. And I know that's a hard thing to do in this country. We don't get a long lunch break or time to then walk it off. But it's really best because, as we know, during the, hey Jen, during the nighttime hours, you don't want to have a big full stomach from a large dinner and then have kapha time come on in and put us to sleep and slow down our digestion. So lunch should really be our largest meal. It's when the Pitta energy is at its highest energetically, but also within our stomachs for that Agni to really break those foods down, assimilate, and absorb everything. And then on the flip side, when we've got that 10 to 2 a.m., we want to get ourselves to bed no later than 10:30, because around that time is when that Pitta energy wakes up again and we get that second wind. So maybe we even start feeling it around 9:45 or 10:15 when we want to jump back on our email and answer that one last, question, or hop back on Facebook or look at our Pinterest page, and then all of a sudden we're up for another 2 hours. We want to get ourselves in bed before Pitta hits us, because the nighttime Pitta and the early morning Pitta is for detoxification, and it's for the time where our bodies turn inward and work really hard at metabolizing everything and flushing out what it doesn't need. And if we're awake doing stuff or drinking that last cup of tea or having a snack, that's just going to add to the burden of what Pitta is trying to do, which is revitalize us for the next morning. So just a little bit about Pitta dosha and, the ways that we can bring a little bit more balance into it. So like I said, I've been talking about the 3 doshas leading up into the Panchakarma options I'm going to be setting up for you guys by Friday. So I'm going to have a track 1 and track 2. Track 1's kind of the shortened version. It's just 10 days. Track 2 will be 17 days. And it's really going to incorporate the sort of broader picture of Panchakarma from an at-home perspective. So both of them are both totally doable. They're both, a big commitment, but when you think about the grand scheme of life, either 10 days or 17 days isn't a long time to do. And I promise you, I really can promise you that if you're able to commit to one or the other, track 1 or track 2, you're going to feel so much better, and you're going to be kind of instilling that self-care routine that maybe you're not doing on a regular basis, if nothing else, that you can slowly continue to integrate on. And springtime is the best time to do it. So I'm going to be outlining all the specifics of both Panchakarma tracks within the rest of the week. I'm going to be meeting with you on Wednesday again to outline some more. But otherwise, I hope these live videos have been helping you. Remember to check back. I've done 4 others that you can tune into for a little recap around the doshas, so you can tune into your own constitution a little bit better, and maybe you'll want to join me on the Panchakarma train starting real soon. So thanks everyone for joining, and let me know if you have questions. You can post them here or any of the other videos. I'm happy to answer them as we move along, and you can be looking for the Panchakarma event being posted no later than Friday of this week. All right, guys, have an awesome night. I'll talk to you soon. See ya.